Welcome to another episode of Grant Writing Tips with Amber and Gwen. Today, they're going to be looking at two important elements of grants, goals, and evaluations. So stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of Grant Writing Tips with Amber and Gwen. Today, they're going to be looking at two important elements in writing a grant, and that is goals and evaluations. Amber and Gwen, it's a pleasure talking with both of you.
Thank you, Patrick. It's great to be here.
Likewise. I'm looking forward to this recording and our programming that we're going to be doing throughout the year. In this space. Gwen and I have been on a lot of committees together and doing some, having great conversations, been in some trainings together as well. So this is the first of many things that we'll be doing together. So I'm excited that we actually get to work directly with each other.
Thanks again, Patrick. We are here to talk about some great grant writing tips. These are brought to you by Ohio State University Extension and Central State University Extension partners. I'm Gwynn Stewart, and I work as an assistant professor in community development and extension. I'm located in Noble County.
And I'm Amber, and I work on a community and economic development team as an extension educator at Central State University. And I am based in the southern region of Ohio. My core area is the city of Cincinnati in Hamilton County.
And Amber has quite a large territory for Central State as well, many counties. So today we're sharing some tips from the curriculum, The Beginner's Guide to Grant Writing, that was developed by our friends in Extension at Purdue University, and we're using it with permission. Amber and I have both been trained on the curriculum, and we're happy to share some of these great grant writing tips. Our objectives for today are to help you understand the goal components of a grant proposal and also understand the evaluation or measures process. It's often said if it's worth doing, then it's worth measuring. And so we want to take a closer look at these two areas within most grant proposals that will be required. So before you write a proposal, it's important to take a moment or two and think about some of the topics that you want to be sure are in place. First of all, has your organization done a strategic plan? Do you have a clear mission or vision for the organization? And do you have some of your key priorities laid out? Importantly, also, does your governing board support it? If you're working with a local community or government, do you have the permission of the county commission board or the local village council or other leaders that would require a permission to do the application?
Sometimes even if you're a nonprofit, a lot of times you will need permission of your board of trustees or board of directors with a simple letter saying that they are allowing you to apply. So that is a governing body of the organization.
Finally, most importantly, do you have the time? If you're going to commit to doing a well thought out and well prepared, well written grant, then you have to allow the time to do the research and the writing and having time for others to look at it and review it. So it can be time intensive. So we want to talk quickly about the components of a standard grant proposal. They include an organizational introduction. So a little more about, to Amber's point, the nonprofit that you're writing for, the village or county. You might share some of your key things that you've done, awards that you've won, your background, how long you've been in service, maybe share some data points that are critical. You want to also share your needs statement and goals and expected outcomes, which we're going to cover in more detail. You might share your project description, giving a little more detail about the program or service that you're looking for funding to create or to stand up. You want to do a budget. And you want the budget, not to be overdone, but, so that the funder gets a good idea of What are you going to spend? And do you have other revenues? And then oftentimes you may also be asked to share details on your organization's background financially, like audited financial statements, those types of things. You want a timeline. You want that to be aligned with what the funder is asking you for. And Amber's going to share a lot of information about evaluation strategies here in a few moments. And then also, Amber has asked us to add this concept of sustainability. Amber, you want to share more about that?
Well, yeah. So sustainability is, are you going to be able to continue the program that you are asking for funding for beyond the life of the grant? What are you fundraising? Are you applying for other grants? Are you building partnerships, leveraging in-kind services? All of these things will go into how you can sustain the project beyond the life of the grant.
If you're looking for funding, you might see some different terminology like what is shown here. You might see something called an RFP, an acronym that's often used for a request for proposal. And you might see funding agencies or organizations or foundations provide a request for proposal for grant applications. It might also be called an RFA, a request for application. If you're looking on the grants.gov website, you might see NOFO or NOFA acronyms, Notice of Funding Opportunity or Notice of Funding Availability. So we want you to just be aware that you might see different terminology on different types of funding that could look like this.
Terminology that you might see is a request for qualifications, right? Or a letter of intent. So these are shortened versions, or the information you will have to turn in is a shortened version of what will be required in an RFP. And sometimes it's a requisite to be completed before you can do a full RFP. So those are some of the common terminologies that are used.
And now Amber is going to share more about goals and outcomes. And these really get you thinking about the change or the impact that you want to achieve with what you're doing in your grant.
And we talk about goals and outcomes, right? What is the change that you plan to achieve? Is there a need for what you plan to achieve, right? So basically, does it correlate with your need statement? It needs to be meaningful, realistic, inspiring. Can it be done? That's the realism in it. Can it actually be done? I have seen proposals where people turn in, they name drop and they just have a bunch of names, but it doesn't make sense in the context of the proposal. So it has to be realistic. And within your budget and timelines and evaluations, is it feasible to even accomplish the project? So within your bandwidth. So those are things that have to be with these goals and outcomes. And a team needs to agree on the project. So you hear all the time SMART goals. Are things specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, or realistic, or time-based? But we in the grant world like to say SMARTY goals, right? Not smart aleck, but SMARTY. And we're adding inclusive and equitable, right? So what is the specific goal that you're trying to accomplish? Is it measurable? It has to be where someone can come in and validate and say, yes, you met the goal that you set. Is it attainable? Because you have a great idea, but if there's no need or demand for it, then it's irrelevant. Is it time-based? Can it be accomplished within the constraint of the funding opportunity? Is it inclusive of community? So as Gwynn stated earlier, you might have letters of support that show that the community supports it. Local government may support your internal board of trustees or board of directors or your own agency, community partners, people you have worked with in the past. So those are all part of, are you inclusivity, and are you including people from the public? Are you including, if necessary, people who will be recipients of the service? Are they included in your process somehow? And is it equitable? Is it the best bang for your buck for serving the community that you said you're going to serve? So when you look at goals and outcomes, you look at short term, what are the immediate kind of medium term or midterm, what is the action or behavior that you're going to do? And long-term conditions, right? So to walk you through that, this is in the short term, we might look at what will change immediately as we implement our proposal. What will change in the next 3 to 6 months? And then the longer term, how will the community situation improve in 1 to 5 years? Short term, who will be directly impacted initially and how? In the medium goals and outcomes, who will take the action or change behavior and how? What results do we anticipate as a result of what we did? And long term, who benefits long term and how? What impact will our project have on the community? So what you're doing is you're answering the who, the what, and the how in your goals and outcomes. And when you're deciding this, you're deciding what that impact will be, who is responsible for that action plan or that part of the strategic plan or proposed project.
And as you write these goals and outcomes, keep it simple, make it clear and concise. Don't overthink it, but be realistic as well.
So the important part with goals and outcomes is to make sure that they're measurable, right? And that they're realistic, they're Smarties, right? These are part of your Smarties. So the overarching goal might be reduce obesity rate in county workers, but your outcomes are going to give you those measurements on how much you're going to reduce those obesity rate. What are the current rates and what are you going to do to move that needle? Graduation rates. You might have in the past a school that graduated at a rate of 50%. And we want to, our goal may be to increase it to 75%. So if you had 100 potential graduates instead of 50, you're going to say, we're going to have at least 75 students graduate. So that's how you add that measurements portion to your goals. And evaluation is kind of the systematic process of telling your story. So you're going to identify assumptions that you made about why your proposal worked. You're going to determine what change is going to occur during and after implementation. You know how earlier we talked about sustainability, right? So how's that change going to continue after you've implemented the project, after the funding has ended for this project? You're going to talk about how you're going to collect and analyze impact data. Impact is not just the number of times you might have had a training class. It could also be, what was the behavior change? How did it impact someone in the longer term? So in the previous example, we gave a goal of increasing the income levels of an immigrant family, right? So this project can say how you set them on a path where that occurred, and your evaluation may come back and say, okay, 5 years from now, after the project, they are still at that level, that new level or higher. So those ways that you're setting up a systematic way of looking at impact. And that's doing surveys and things of that nature. And then you're going to communicate, how you're going to communicate, interpret, and reflect on the results. So how you're going to report out to the funder, to the community, or any other stakeholders in that proposed project. And then you're going to use this data and in your evaluation processes to make informed decisions to improve what is next. That can happen during the project being implemented. What you need to prep for the project, like are you going to use community advisory boards and things like that? And how are you going to impact decision-making for future projects?
Also, it's important, sometimes your funder that you're applying to might give you evaluation metrics. So make sure that you're reading through all of the paperwork related to the grant and how they want you to kind of set these things up. If they have certain metrics they're looking for you to meet, pay attention to that. And also when you evaluate well, it can show if your project is replicable to another community or nonprofit. So these are great tools, these evaluation thoughts.
So different data collection methods are pre and post test. So you're given the same prior to you implementing your program, and then post to see if there was any behavior or knowledge change, or if there's different feelings about whatever the subject matter is. You might have one-on-one interviews, focus groups, surveys. Surveys are good. You can use online methods, in person, a combination of the two. Making observations. These are very, very important. Sometimes, that term being a fly on the wall, right? And so you're out there in the community that you're serving, making just observations, just observing how people are doing. Or you have someone to if it's a training, to sit in on the training to give you feedback. And then direct counts. What are the participation levels, right? Is it aligned in all of this? Is it aligned with the goals that you set out and objectives that you set out for the proposed project? These are different forms of data collection methods. And in your proposal, you will say how and how you will use different data collection methods, which ones you will use, why does it fit? And to Gwen's point, you have to make sure that they are aligned with the requirements of the grant opportunity. So overall, some evaluation tips. Connect measuring to objectives and the program, right? Involve stakeholders in the evaluation design. Think about the types of indicators to capture achievements. And always follow best practices for conducting evaluation processes. You want to have voluntary and confidentiality statements. You want to make sure there's no leading questions or forced answers. And so you don't want to lead them one way or the other. You want it to be them to be able to get a true, honest, authentic answer.
You can reach myself or Amber if you'd like to learn more about grant writing, or if you have questions that we might be able to help with.
Many of us who have written grants also realize that many times grants only pay a portion of the whole program. And consequently, you have to also put in your own monies, as well as work with other groups to fulfill those goals and needs. So, in looking at the goals and evaluations, how do you two suggest pre-planning with other groups in regards to acquiring a grant?
Well, one of the things that we do in the full training class that we do around this subject is we talk about strategies to build those partnerships, how to identify what you need to go after that funding, and who do you need to partner with and collaborate with. Also, looking at there's a value to in-kind services and that may be lended to the project from outside sources of departments within your own agency. So that is something that is important. The driver of that are the instructions in the grant opportunity. Gwynn, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think that Patrick's sort of alluding to what we might call matching funds, and matching partners. Partners often have matching funds that can help you do the total project. And some grants do require matching funds be included. So that is the local buy-in, if you will, to the process. And when you're figuring that out, often that helps determine partners, as Amber mentioned. And so partners working together form that team that you're looking to work together on determining what are the individual partners' goals and outcomes as well. And as she mentioned, there is, a full 2-day class as well as a 1-day class option that we've been offering across the state. And you can learn more about that at this quick link, go.osu.edu/grants course. And those upcoming classes will be listed. We are building our team of teachers and working to offer those more routinely throughout the state. And now that we have Central State as a partner with Ohio State, it's a great opportunity to increase those grant classes. And we hope that you have good luck writing. As we say in the grant writing world, you can't win if you don't try, and you don't win all the time. So we give you some tips for that too in the class, and we try to help you learn, what you can do differently. Grant writing is like writing, it takes time, it takes practice to get better at it. And so the more you try, And the more you work at it, the better you will get and the better your outcomes.
We're talking with Amber and Gwen in regards to grant writing tips. Both Amber and Gwen are available if you have any specific questions. We do recommend that you look at the go.osu.edu grants course. It is a really good program that helps you to write a very favorable grant proposal. Gwen and Amber, I want to thank both of you for making time available to present this grant writing. I know that in grant writing, it is a process, and it's not something that you just one day sit down and write. It's something that you have to give a lot of thought to. And I know that both of you have been involved with writing different grants because of your respective jobs. And it can be easy, but it can also be very difficult depending upon how much preparation that you have.
Yes, and that's the key, is that preparation. So like I said, during the class, we give you strategies even on effective ways to search. There are so many different opportunities and so many different funders. If you don't do it right, you'll spend 40 hours just searching for that right opportunity. So we help you to have some strategies and planning on how to narrow that down based on what your needs are, and do that more effectively, because we know that that's not your only responsibility, right? And like I said, help you with that planning and preparation for the grant before you even pick up a pen or type on a keyboard the actual proposal. The more you have planning completed up front, the easier the actual writing process will be and more efficient. So we talk about that in our training as well. But the key to all of it is those goals and objectives being aligned with the funding opportunity and with what you as an agency, what you all do, right? So it has to be, you have to be in that space.
Thinking about your bright idea and aligning that with the funder of choosing that matches your mission and their mission align, so that we often say that funders don't, they fund people. They want to fund people and the work of the people in the community that they serve. So that those are important. And, this class has a lot of really great resources that are takeaway, a great book that you can use in reflection after you get back to your desk and get started writing. And it gives you the outlines of, what to write when, a budget outline. Some of us are better on the writing than the budget. And so the budget worksheets are there and the timelines as well. And we remind people that you may have two timelines, the grant writing timeline and then the program and project timeline once you get funding. So you have to work ahead and make sure you allow time for folks to review, and you have a great project and a great proposal then to submit.
Amber and Gwen, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.